Paper, your express ticket to the New Zealand House of Representatives. Every episode, we unravel the complex world of legislation, debate, and democracy. From bills to select committees, we've got it all covered. So fasten your seatbelts because you're about to dive deep into the heart of New Zealand's political landscape. Stay tuned, stay informed, and stay engaged with the Order Paper podcast.
And it's midday here in Wellington, and off for another big bumper Order Paper show today. So I hope everyone's had a bit of a good week. Did you get your submissions off? That would be the big thing to have to do, but there's a couple more submissions that you've got to get off for if it's going to be the central government. Plus also I've got the fun job with the Wellington City Council long-term plan. So let's go around and introduce our panelists for today, because we've got 4 panelists coming in here. Thank you, Stacey, for having them all flying all up on the screen. We've got Kai here, who's in the middle. We've got Ian, who's here on the top right. We've got Paul, who's here in the bottom left, and we've got Wayne, who's on the bottom right. How is everybody today?
Yeah, good. Thanks.
Yeah, very good.
Okay, so Kai, introduce yourself and who are you to the panel here, so we all know, to the panel and to the watchers, who are you and what do you follow, and what are you looking about being panelists for today?
Yeah, kia ora. So my name's Kaya. I'm a political junkie. I'm a Wellingtonian. I'm a student. I'm a student journalist, and my big issues are anything ranging from the most complicated transport infrastructure stuff to the highest level constitutional stuff, and I can talk about just about any of it. So great to be here.
Okay, thank you. Ian, who also has been part of the It's in the Ballot team since 2023 for the general election. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
So give us a bit about yourself, so people know what you do and how we managed to cross paths.
Well, I live here in Auckland and living in the west at the moment, but moving shortly, so we'll be a bit more central, which will be great. And we crossed paths through a mutual friend. There's a friend called Andre who's also involved with It's in the Ballot there in Wellington, and a good friend of Sam's. And so Andre, that's how I got involved through Andre.
All right, thank you for that. And now we've got Paul.
Hello there, kia ora. How are you going?
Well, we're good here in Wellington.
It's good. I'm based up in Tamaki Makaurau, up on the North Shore. I am known for short things on TikTok around politics, and I'm a bit of a ringer, to be fair. So everything I've done is kind of last minute prep to hopefully wing my way through this and fake my way through a few conversations.
I'm pretty sure we will. And Wayne.
Kia ora, Wayne from Lower Hutt, Wellington. I've been a Labour Party member for a few years and very proactive in the Labour movement in Wellington and Lower Hutt. I have quite a strong background in politics for many years. I won't go through the CV. And I have also just been given the run sheet this morning, so I'm getting up to speed with the topics, but a lot of these things I'm familiar with anyway. Kia ora.
Okay, and the great news is, let's go around from here. I'm in the Rongotai electorate. Now everyone's got to say which electorate they're in.
Oh.
Top Central.
Newland.
Northcote.
Hutt South.
Okay, so we've managed to get ourselves in multiple different areas. And just for those who are watching at home, anything that happened on Wednesday with Julie and Genta, we are not covering on the show whatsoever. I do know that she is my local MP, but that's end of that. So don't expect any footage that was shown today is going to show what's happened on there. We'll get to the more juicy things of the good questions. Now I've just got to remember which. Oh, yes, I've got the links run sheet. Now, this is something, Wayne, you might be better at, is Te Pire mo Ō-Rākau Te Pai o Maumahara Ō-Rākau Remembrance Bill. Do you know much about that bill, considering that's probably something where you're probably a bit bit of a better one on there than me, considering, you know, my today ain't as good as yours.
Actually, like I said, I've only got the run sheet this morning, so I haven't been through it all. So give me a few minutes to get up to speed, and I should be able to let you know.
Oh, we'll
This
just
is the
wait for the
bill
page
in
to
land pack, isn't it?
load.
Yep.
Yeah. So I grew up near there. It was a fascinating place to be because to go and visit the site originally, you had to drive through it, like literally through it, because when it was confiscated by the Crown, they decided that was the fastest way to build a road right through the middle of the water.
Ah.
So would that be the old State Highway 1?
No, it was actually it was a secondary highway that went from Kihikihi through to, I think it was Cambridge, or it was a little bit further down the line. It was one of the back roads essentially down behind Kihikihi.
Okay.
Would that be where the castle is?
No, a little bit different. Are you thinking of Tito with Pamela's castle?
Yeah, I'm thinking like going towards Miranda.
Oh,
No,
no. Oh, that's way up in the other end of the scale.
Yeah, no, this one was definitely outback, sort of edge of the King Country, where the King Country and the Waipa areas meet. And yeah, it was. We did a tour there. I think it was fifth form geography, and they were taking us out to a few of the significant sites. And it was, literally, bus pulls over in the middle of the road. Here is the PAR site, and they've just driven straight through the hill. It was ridiculous. They told us about how when they first started building the road, they came across a whole bunch of burial sites there, and the local kaumātua would ask, "What do we do with the bodies?" And they turned around and said, "You bury them." Like that should be pretty straightforward. But it was one of those sort of, we don't expect to find bodies in the middle of a war zone burial site. I don't know why these were here. So yeah, it's certainly an area of huge significance to the local tangata whenua in that particular part of the country.
Okay, you look like you've been reading stuff, Wayne.
Yeah. Just coming up to speed about it. So I'm just going through all the points. And from what's been said, I understand a lot more what's going on here.
But you know, it was one of those bills that to me it was the good news. The part I love about this, and I mean, we'll show the clip when Tiana Tuiono does the whole voting process in Te Reo Māori, which I really liked. So should we flip over to? We'll head over to the what's it called? Now it is the. Now this is an annoying thing I hate about. Now will this be the? This is the fun part of what happens there. I don't know how. No, and now we've learnt actually what happens when you do this on a slow computer. We learnt. I wonder if all my cues are in the right place, or are they suddenly all gone because
technology?
It's actually quite funny. All my cues have disappeared. The good news is I do have a list on here as the everyone's going to take its time to sit down there and get to the videos. But yeah, I had all these cues lined up, ready to go, but this computer just does not want to play ball with us today. So that's a lot of fun, but
I think it's today. Every call I've had today, and this is, I think, the third or fourth call I've had, there's been issues with technology from everybody I've dealt with. It's just Monday. It's like, nah, bugger that. Don't want to work. Okay,
we've got the oh, no, wrong one. No, wrong minister's sitting in the seat there. What's it called? I like what Stacey has just sat there and said in the private chat. Even technology hates Monday. So here's the clip from Parliament.
With Ō-Rākau and koirā te tūmanako. It is my honour also to sit on the Māori Affairs Select Committee. When I came to this House, it was the one committee that I asked if I could sit on. I cannot wait to receive this bill in the coming days. And then, as my friend and Chair Dan said, to receive your submissions in writing and in person. We cannot wait to come and visit you. And then I cannot wait to stand in your presence again several months from now when this House passes this bill into law. Kia ngā whakamuri ki kokiri whakamua.
This is taking a bit.
Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill to the House.
Here we are.
Ko te pātai, kia whakaiti e te mōtene, koutou e whakai, ki mai ai, ki te kore, kao, ko aitia.
Ō-Rākau te pai o Maumahara Ō-Rākau Remembrance Bill. First reading.
Ko te pātai, kia whakarohia te pire whakataunga kreme e te committee whiriwhiri nā take Māori. Koutou whakai, ki mai ai, ki te kore kao, ko aitia.
What does everyone think about that?
Oh, it's beautiful, you know. I mean, whenever these sort of things kind of happen so spontaneously, it just shows a building kind of progression of the institution, and it's just something that really just underpins the significance of this kind of legislation for these communities. And I think it's brilliant.
I think my concern is actually who's leading the committee. Dan is my local MP, and he spent his whole campaign talking about things like, I believe in one person, one vote. And I'm not going to tell you what that means, but I believe in one person, one vote. And Three Waters is bad. And now he's in charge of something like this at a committee level. It just, it's hard to sit back and watch sometimes. I also know Dan has a very tenuous relationship with local marae and with his own relationship with Te Ao Māori. So I find it really fascinating to see him in that whole process here. Great to see bipartisan support, though, for this bill. But yeah, it's an interesting one to see who's actually involved in it.
Okay, now I'm just about to line up the next clip. Oh, heck. Okay. Oh, heck. Went back one too far, but that's all good. So the next one is so the next part is the Appropriations 2022-2023 Confirmation Validation Bill Committee of the House, with the first person to be MP Barbara, Nicola Willis is on there. And Barbara Edmonds will be kicking off the first question once I... Actually, wait a minute. There's a thing on here where you can just go straight to there.
Expenditure Select Committee, the Honourable Stuart Smith, and thank the Treasury and the Minister for her time in presenting to the committee at FEC. One of the things that we talked about, or we asked questions around Treasury, was their performance over the year, and they had said that they had met a number of key achievements, including the provision of high quality advice on tax settings, macroeconomic and regulatory frameworks. They were also very proud to talk about Te Tai Waiora, just their first wellbeing report, which presented robust quantitative evidence and analysis on the state of wellbeing in New Zealand across a range of dimensions. So my question is to the Minister, given that with the budget policy statements, the wellbeing objectives have changed, will that Te Tai Waiora, what is her plan for ensuring that there is robust quantitative evidence? What are the measures she will be using to compare to a previous measure of wellbeing, and what type of statistics will she be looking for to ensure the robustness of that evidence?
The Honourable Nicola Willis.
Mr Chair, I thank the Chair for his chairing of the committee and his report, and I also thank the member for her first question, which I think is incredibly symbolic. Because governments have a choice about how they measure and how they record their contribution to people's living standards and well-being. Now, the previous government made an art of very lengthy, quite glossy, descriptive documents with huge amounts of words and verbiage about what they intended to do and the sum of the grand intentions and how that would sum to wonderful outcomes for New Zealanders. But then at the same time as having these wonderfully lengthy descriptive documents which killed a lot of trees and took a lot of policy analysts a lot of hours, oversaw a period of some of the highest inflation we have seen in a generation, which delivered in substantive terms a cost of living crisis which saw New Zealanders' real purchasing power eroded, thereby grossly undermining their well-being. At the same time, they oversaw a significant increase in real tax levels by allowing fiscal drag and bracket creep to push New Zealanders into higher tax brackets so that they were, in literal terms, paying a high proportion of their wages in tax. and at the same time oversaw the magnificent contribution of increasing government spending by 80%, and yet I am still to find a New Zealander who can point for me to an area of public life that they thought got 80% better. Because it certainly wasn't waiting lists for operations, it certainly wasn't educational achievement, and it certainly wasn't an 80% reduction in crime. And all of this, perhaps there may have been in several agencies an 80% increase in the number of public servants, certainly not on the front line. And all of this leads me, Mr. Chair, to this conclusion, which is you can stamp your budget with the word well-being as nicely as you like, and you can write as many pages of verbiage about well-being as you like, but if you don't deliver low, stable inflation, fair tax and effective spending, then none of that is worth the paper that it is written on. And I am proud to be part of a government and to be a finance minister who's going to cut that crap and focus on results, and isn't going to focus on pages and pages of reports about well-being, because frankly it was just talk, and we're going to walk the walk.
So, want to sit there and go on there? Did it feel like she answered the question?
Well, it seemed like there was a lot of paper being wasted and trees being burned. I mean, that's what I heard from it.
But did she answer the question?
Not really.
No,
Political waffle.
It felt like question time at, 3.5 hours into Parliament sitting day. Question
I
time
think
at
we're
1
setting
p.m.
us up for an austerity budget by the sounds of it.
But one of the things I'm worried about this government, especially in the first 100 days, is that when asked questions, they never answer them, obviously, because it's a political way to answer a question. But also there's very little evidence to support anything that they're focused on. And it's been a real worry for me.
To be honest, it just sounds like the same kind of way Labour answer questions as well.
Yeah, no surprise hearing that come from you. Yeah,
I found it interesting that she uses it as it's an attack on Labour, and it's like, yeah, I get that, but that's not the question, that's not the time. It's just about bullet points and the usual speeches which don't have evidence behind them, which, where can you see an 80% improvement? How about those people that didn't die during COVID? Is that a good improvement measure to measure by? No, because, we don't have enough police anymore. Yeah, it's just, it's ridiculous hyperbole that tries to make her look like she's got a hard job to do. And don't get me wrong, finance minister is a hard job to do, but you need to know the basics of maths, and she clearly thinks that she's better at giving speeches than she is at putting together spreadsheets.
Yeah, so a common trope among governments that are seeking to sort of minimize their presence in society is to say, well, how do we directly translate our action, the action that we do, into outcomes? And while that's, I think that's an admirable thing to go for as outcomes, but outcomes aren't the only things. You have to have inputs and you have to have outputs that are measurable. And the wellbeing budget in particular, Nicola Willis said that the wellbeing budget, as far as she's concerned, is dead. The concept of it, which was, and the idea of a wellbeing budget to New Zealand, it's a first in history that New Zealand does or had done. It's gone now. She clearly sees that as just action for the sake of action, without recognizing, because of the political side of things, recognizing what those outcomes would be. She's like Paul said, they don't recognize the sort of things that Labour value, just like Labour don't recognize the things that National value. So you can toss out a lot of work, which makes it for naught, which is an issue. So I think that this is probably a really good excuse to just sort of do nothing, which is the Conservative philosophy. And what they choose to do as a result will seem very counterintuitive to the experienced lives of ordinary people.
Yeah, I'd say what we need here is less paperwork and less waffle and more action.
And don't kill many trees.
Yes.
And something to take a cheeky jab at Nicola. When she stood for the Ohio electorate, the Wellington was it ferry terminal to go to Picton is in the Ōhārio electorate. So wonder if she'll find that on her Google Maps. Who knows? But it's something of making a grandstand statement. Let's shift over to Chloe Smallbrick. She's
to in this annual review debate, just to outline them for the Minister and foreshadow them. They will be primarily on productivity and as that relates to the settings in our tax system and also on the issue of climate change. So just firstly to that issue of productivity, and those who are following along at home will find handily in comments from the Minister under the financial statements of the Government of New Zealand for the year ended 30th of June 2023, page 5. It says here, and I quote, "The Minister said that the question that needs to be asked when taking on debt is whether it is used to enhance productive capacity and grow the economy." Comments with regard to productivity in general continue to filter throughout and reflected by comments from Treasury in particular. The Treasury here on page 9, and I quote, "has identified slow productivity growth as one of New Zealand's long-term economic performance challenges." And here, Mr. Speaker, we turn to the meat of the sandwich, and that is on page 10, where I quote, "We discussed a capital gains tax and the possible effects on productivity. The Treasury said its position on a capital gains tax has been on the record for some time. We think that there would be merit in introducing one for a range of reasons, but we acknowledge that successive governments have determined that there isn't public appetite for it at this stage. It said the lack of capital gains tax has affected the distribution of investment in the economy, and that can only be negative for productivity. It said a capital gains tax would lead to a different distribution of capital in the economy and lower house prices." To that effect, one of my many questions for the Minister, if we are able to engage in this back and forth, noting that ahead of the May budget, we have already seen that $2.9 billion tax cut for landlords or those tax deductibility changes, what consideration was made, if any, with reference particularly to that weight of importance on productivity? What kind of official work or otherwise was undertaken to ascertain what productivity gains may or may not be made as a result of that $2.9 billion policy decision?
The Honourable Nicola Willis.
Well, Mr. Chair, the member may be of the view that it is proper for ministers to engage in extensive policy analysis on policies that they have explicitly ruled out delivering on, an explicit contravention of the mandate they've been given by the New Zealand people. But on our side of the House, we don't think that's okay. So you should not be surprised to learn that we haven't engaged in extensive analysis or research about the prospect of a capital gains tax. It's long been our position that you don't tax your way to prosperity. When it comes to the question of productivity, I am delighted by the member's newfound love of Treasury analysis, and I look forward to her similarly embracing the need for more competitive settings for firms, for better consenting and permitting processes, for the delivery of infrastructure, to more flexible labour markets, to more competitive delivery of public services, to the role that the private sector can play in all of those, because these are also topics that Treasury through the years has commented on. When it comes to the question of taxation of property, there has long been a tax principle adhered to by successive governments in New Zealand that people are taxed not on their revenue but on their profit, and that has meant for many, many years, including during governments which that member's party supported, that the interest costs are deducted from profitability before taxation is applied, and our government is returning to that norm.
Okay. How do you rate Nicola's answer?
Tiana sitting there did not look very happy.
I mean, to be fair, that's the look I get every time she opens her mouth.
Yeah, I saw a comment there. She was saying, like, oh, you don't tax your way to prosperity, but yet the MPs gave themselves a pay rise just recently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm interested on that, on the pay rise point, to see who else actually gives a portion of their salary to charity, like Luxon is.
That you can then claim back as a tax refund.
Yeah, pretty much.
True. Productivity point was kind of interesting. I mean, Treasury have been downgrading their productivity forecasts since last year, And the outlook, when you look at the performance of manufacturing, the performance of services, that's bad. It's very bad. We are slowly losing our productivity, and we're an economy that never was really that productive anyway when it came to things like building houses. And the government has actually a responsibility to make some actions on this, but the only thing they've really done is clear the space for whatever they were going to do by getting rid of the Productivity Commission, for example, without proposing a decent kind of alternative. I know they've got the Ministry of Regulation, but that's an internal government thing, right? That's not going to have reverberations across the rest of the country. It's just a lot of the productivity piece has long been used by National as a sticking point for their opponents, but I haven't seen anything concrete yet that they would propose for productivity. What other people think?
I think the tax thing is kind of fascinating because every economist will tell you if you want to offset the damages from tax cuts, you need to have a counter tax with something like a capital gains tax or a wealth tax. And New Zealanders hate the idea of either of those. I was talking to, I think it was Chippy actually, a couple of weeks ago, and it was mentioned really specifically, as soon as you talk about wealth tax or capital gains tax, you will be flooded with letters from people who are upset. And it tends to be an older generation who have gone out and bought their family home, and they seem to think that's going to be impacted by it. But just the sheer anger at just the concept of having a fairer tax system that works better, that we see happen everywhere else in the world, freaks New Zealanders out. They hate it. So National gets away with playing the whole, well, we were never going to do it anyway. And Labour has to do the run to catch up with the whole, well, we'd never propose something like that. That's not one of our policies. When reality is everybody gets impacted by not having an equitable tax system like that, and everybody's poorer for it. So it might not be about taxing ourselves into prosperity, but it's about making sure that we can all get what we need to out of a tax system that is fair. And Nicola's very good at just digging in and doing the whole, well, no, it's not fair to what we think is the priority at the moment. And, they'll never learn their lesson.
Yeah, I wonder if she actually thinks, what do you call it, landlords are getting a hard time because they don't have to actually, pay GST on the rent they receive. Whereas,
yes, they do. If it's an income, they have to pay income tax on it. Yeah,
but there's not GST, whereas a business would pay GST on their revenue. They do claim it back on their expenses, but, So it was different sides of coins, considering they seem to be favouring landlords, not possibly a productive sector of the market, such as Being Here Limited being my business, and was it Ian's business? Wayne, do you have business, Wayne?
Do I have business?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you do or not. I know you seem to be all over the place, and it makes sense to have one in your case.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. But you know what I mean. You would have to be GST registered to do what you're doing.
Yes. Now, it's one of the things I wanted to say was, the quote you said earlier was that all New Zealanders don't want wealth tax. Where I think the focus is the people that are most vocal and know how to vocalize what they want are the ones you're hearing from. A lot of people who are from the lower socioeconomic part of the scale, they're not the type of people to be there writing the email, be there collaborating with groups via social media.
They're probably working when the Residents Association is having their meeting.
Exactly. And for someone who's a renter myself, my rent's gone up 5 years in a row. And I can see, I live in the Hutt Valley where there's been a housing crisis for quite a while now, and I can see it's really becoming a problem. I used to work in for an organisation called the Zero Hunger Collective, and the amount of people I see shouting out for food every day online and social media has just gone through the roof. Just to reflect on some things which happened in the past, COVID, food insecurity, so food banks usage went up over 500%. That went through the roof. But with the cost of living going up how it is, the problem is that people can't negotiate rent, they can't negotiate electricity. Therefore, the only thing left to negotiate is take food out of their food budget. And that's because that's the only option they've got left. And so that's why the amount of people going to food banks is increased markedly, because that's the only part of the budget which they can change. And the effects I see in the Hutt Valley, I see someone asking for food online every hour now, so, and also finding a house here or just a room. I'm married to a Filipino, and often Filipinos that come over, they can't actually start working until they've secured accommodation, and they're against thousands of other people who don't have accommodation. So that causes another problem on our working infrastructure, because people can't start working here until they find a place, and it takes some months just to find a room so they can actually start working here. So the problem's so systemic.
Yeah, it's quite difficult here, the housing market in Auckland too. I mean, the rental market, we've just been through that myself, my wife and I, and we went and had a look at a whole lot of places, and we were just missing out all the time. And so what we did in the end is we went through, we knew someone who goes to our church, and their daughter works for property management. So we got in contact with their daughter, and they helped us secure another property. Now, it wasn't one that they listed, but it was through another property manager associated with the same real estate company. And so that's how we managed to get into the top of the list to get into another property. Yeah, and so yeah, we're very fortunate that we're able to get in there to that. But yeah, there's a lot of people here in Auckland looking for rent, and the price for rent up here for at least a 2-bedroom is $550, $600 now.
Yeah, that's about the
crazy.
same in Wellington as well.
Yeah, it's about the same.
Basically Newtown, southern suburbs are pretty much like, if you're in a 2-bedroom under 500, you're doing well, and that never used to be the case. Like, I remember when we were in Kingston, we had a 4-bedroom house, but only 3 bedrooms were really usable, because you had to walk through to get from to bedroom 4. You had to walk through bedroom 3, so bedroom 4 was the storage room. But effectively, we were paying $460 a week for that back in 2018. And we thought, Jamie and I were paying $230 a week rent. Well, put it this way, I'm paying $325 where I'm staying now, which is quite up there. And I mean, I know what Stacey is paying, who's in there. She's, her array are up in that field. And just like, what is like some places, like a 1-bedroom is like $450 in Wellington. It's just like, what the hell? And then you have to add power, you have to add internet. It all adds up. It really is pretty damn scary. And like, also, like, we're about to have a new parking system put in Newtown, and which means you pretty much got to have residence parking in order to do it, which that's $195 a year. Which that's in addition, just so you can park the car. And like people like me, I need my car to function for my income, because, I can't function without it. My car's got a tow bar. I can't pull around a coffee cup on the back of a bike. And even my own local MP understands that one. Yeah. Okay. Now, it's a different minister. Was it? But we've got Dr. Megan Woods here on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We also heard extensively from the Independent Climate Commission around their role not only in setting targets, but part of their role in terms of monitoring how the country was tracking towards targets. Of course, most of the work that was needed underway to reach emissions budget 1 was work that has happened way before today, or the time of which the hearings, that time has passed. We also heard in terms of emissions budgets 2 and emissions budgets 3 that it's very difficult to introduce new initiatives to achieve savings in those in those budget periods. And given the hole that has been left in the emissions budgets by the mini budget under the year under review, 3 megatonnes by Giddy alone in emissions budget 2, 4 megatonnes in emissions budget 3, not to mention the cancelling of the clean car discount and other transport initiatives. There's quite a gap there that needs to be made up, and given it is so difficult to put in place those initiatives with enough lead time, I think the House would benefit from hearing what the Minister's plans are to plug those gaps, not wait till the end of the year and say that we'll give that when we give advice later in the year. The House needs some indication on that now.
Well, thank you very much.
The Honourable Simon Watts.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair, for the opportunity to speak, and I'll take the two questions from the member in order. The first aspect that was raised was in regards to the broader ETS model, and I think it's important to recognise that this coalition government wants to ensure that we have a credible ETS in place in terms of their functioning market. And any initiatives that are underway in terms of policy settings by the government need to enable that marketplace is credible. It is right that the government did cease the review that was undertaken by the prior government, and we are currently looking at the mechanisms and opportunities in regards to ensure that we can continue to ensure that ETS marketplace is robust and credible. We have signalled in our coalition agreement a number of aspects, particularly around in the forestry space, around land use classes. We've been very clear with our position that we don't plan to undertake significant changes within the ETS marketplace. Our preference is to focus on regulatory reform outside of the ETS that in effect deals with some of the underlying issues. The member is and will be aware that there are a number of issues that the market has identified around the broader market. But it is really important for this coalition government to provide clear certainty and clarity in terms of what we will do, but more importantly, what we will not do, and that's what we've signalled. There will be an opportunity to provide information around exactly those mechanisms in the months to come, and that is a work program that is currently underway. The second question was in regards to the emissions budgets and the challenges around ensuring that we meet those. Emissions budget 1 is pretty much in order and on track. Emissions budget 2 has risks in regards to delivery, and that is something that we are monitoring too. There is, with any forecast, a degree of flex in regards to where that actually will land, and we are monitoring that closely. In addition, ensuring that we have good data to inform that. But the overall program of initiatives in order to ensure that we do meet those targets, which is a commitment of this government under the Prime Minister's statements, commitment number 9, is in regards to the pathways that will be included in regards to our emissions reduction plan 2 that we will begin to consult in June and finalise at the end of this year. The member is absolutely right that we cannot afford to delay action and implementation that will reduce emissions. And while across the House we will agree on the direction of travel in terms of the targets, this government will do delivery differently to the prior government. But we will be clear and transparent around the pathway for those options, what those emissions reductions will achieve, and the timeline around that, because I think it is important to ensure that we have a credible and transparent plan of pathways that enables us to decarbonise at the appropriate rate.
How did you find Simon Watt's response?
I always find it funny when the National Party's like, no, we will hit these targets, but more mines, more roads, less public transport, let's do everything we can to fight against actually hitting these targets, but we will get there, I promise. It's a very strange way to do things. It's like saying, I will make dinner by sitting on the couch and not getting up and cooking.
I like that one.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing is I've seen pictures of electric buses, and they're being towed by a petrol-powered towing truck or something. So it's like so what happens if these electric vehicles get
if they break down,
break down, they stop working, and then they have to get towed by a petrol-powered vehicle?
well, you're probably thinking diesel powered, considering you're stupid to run a petrol vehicle if it's heavy vehicle. But I can confirm with Joanne, a friend of mine who used to work for NZ Bus, the electric buses barely broke down. You occasionally had the odd one that went flat, but often when they went flat was if there was something wrong the night before with, say, there should have been charging, but there was a power transformer that went out or something like that. But in general gist of it, she said it's something like they were more reliable than the diesel buses from her days working at NZ Bus. So, we always seem to see all these different things there, but, we don't seem to see it when it works brilliantly.
No, you don't hear complaints. If something works, people don't complain, so you don't hear about it.
Exactly. It's like if people receive their passports in 2 weeks, they wouldn't be complaining. But if it takes 10 weeks, Brooke, considering she wanted to do a ministerial inquiry over one person having an urgent passport application, which you would have to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so now here's the next one is head to Aisha Verrill. Now,
community care plays a key role in bookending
the
hospital and specialist care system. There are still some significant pay parity issues to be dealt with and significant concerns in the mental health and addiction services. There is a shortage of facilities available. These are more acute in certain areas, and we have a shortage of key workforce staff. There are also issues around immunisation rates, which have been declining since 2017, exacerbated by COVID, but particularly harmful to Māori and Pacifica. There are a number of recommendations that we hope Health New Zealand will continue to work hard on in the year ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, well done. The Honourable Aisha Verrill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and can I acknowledge my colleague from across the House and the Chair of the Health Select Committee in guiding our newly formed in the 54th Parliament Health Select Committee through our first major undertaking as a committee, which is the annual review process. And we had the opportunity to dive deep with officials onto the very important matters that my colleague has outlined. I do want to reiterate my colleague's point that we spent a lot of time on workforce, and I do recall one of the answers to questions about Health New Zealand performance raised by a committee member was that it is the workforce which is the major limit on the health system's ability to meet its targets at present. So in that light, I'd like to start with questions on the health workforce. In particular, in the year under review, a workforce plan was created that identified areas of the workforce where there were shortages, quantified those shortages, and identified key strategies in order to address them. Our largest workforce group in the health sector is nurses, and we know that we have to increase the domestic training of nurses. In the year under review, a plan was made that could have increased the number of nurses in training placements in New Zealand by 1,000. My question to the Minister is what updates has he had on progress with the ability to increase training positions for nurses, placements for nurses, so that we can increase our domestically trained nursing workforce?
Now, just for those who are wondering on there, the Minister does not yet answer the question, and another question has been loaded on by the Honourable Pene Henare.
Mr. Chair. The Honourable Pene Henare.
Kia ora, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just in support of my colleague, my first line of questioning to the Minister is also very similar in the vein of workforce. The committee heard, with respect to Māori health outcomes, the plan to stick to whakamaua, its principles, its pillars in whakamaua, and how strong it was. One of the key pillars in there is, of course, the workforce, in particular the Māori workforce, both those who are seeking jobs in the health profession, but also for those who continue to support the likes of Māori health providers in the administration of their particular services within their community, skills which are highly valued. And of course, we're recognised once again through the COVID-19. My question simply to the Minister is with respect to whakamaua and the targets that it had on recruiting more Māori health or Māori into the healthcare sector, and secondly supporting those who do wish to go on to tertiary studies to study for the likes of nursing degrees, to become doctors and specialists and surgeons within the sector. And finally, with that particular whakamaua report, there was whakamaua strategy, Mr. Chair, to the Minister. There was also the intention to make sure that we are able to grow administrators, Māori administrators through health, and whether or not the Minister can give us a particular update on those. We note that some of the report back has been a little bit vague on whakamaua, and I'm asking the Minister if he can shed a bit of light on those matters.
And just to say, he's now answering both MPs' questions.
The Honourable Shane Ritty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank the members for contributing to this debate, which is for the period 1 July 2022 to 30 June 2023. This is the first year of the health reforms, which was completely in the hands of the previous government, and so substantively this becomes a critique of that work. I will do my very best to use independent resources to address questions and may well cluster various questions together to pass to my delegates so we don't come and go from the podium. First of all, to set a context, and a good context for this debate is the Ministerial Advisory Committee on Health Reforms, which completed their work looking back over that year, and it does set a context for this discussion. Some of the things that they have raised is the ability for the health system, this is in the period under review, to continue to progress workforce development. The organisation should build on the progress they have made to date, address immediate workforce pressures and workforce sustainability. And I will come back to the member's question more specifically about health workforce. Continue to build enabling foundations. Corporate systems are critical and transformative, enabling staff to do their job efficiently and effectively. The current HR system infrastructure inherited by Health New Zealand consists of 200 systems, and some of those systems are out of support or close to the end of life. Utilise the Joint Leadership Group. The Joint Leadership Group does not currently routinely or systematically monitor progress of the reform. It should monitor a ruthlessly prioritised program of work that is aligned to the reform roadmap, but also key prioritised collective action items. Coordinate the approach to addressing social determinants. Socioeconomic and rural issues contribute and compound existing inequities in health outcomes. A strong theme has come through from all three organisations, from system stewardship to local delivery, that there is a need to address social determinants and work proactively and systematically with wider government partners and other social sector organisations. Achieve and coordinate an agreed national mandate. I'll summarise some of these now. It could be beneficial to establish a coordinated organisational system level approach. Ensure the workforce understands what the transformation means for them and their role in it. I think this is an important part of the health reforms in that first year, and the goal towards success, and the Independent Ministerial Advisory Committee is pointing it out here as one of the issues. It is important for the front line to understand not just the vision, but how the reform impacts them and what opportunities the new arrangements bring for new ways of working. There needs to be ongoing focus on workforce communications. Mr. Speaker, there are a number of things further in this independent report that was commissioned, and I want to acknowledge the Chair and thank her for doing that. The health workforce summary that came out in July 2023 at the end of the period in review here had the following gap: 4,800 nurses, 1,050 midwives, 1,700 doctors, including GPs, 170 pharmacists, 120 sonographers, 200 anaesthetic technicians, 220 dental and oral therapists, 30 radiation therapists, and 30 clinical and cardiac physiologists. Now, the question was around the health workforce plan and its implementation. This report and this plan, and I believe it had 54 recommendations, I'd have to check that, but this plan came out July 2023 at the end of the period in review. And so all I can say to that is that a number of the recommendations that were proposed are and have been implemented. I've already commented on the increasing number of general practice registrars, but certainly the Health Workforce Plan, which is due for renewal, has been the template and is the template that I'm still currently working with. And over the period of this debate, I may well come up with further descriptions of exactly which parts of the plan are progressing and to what degree. It'll just take me a moment to get some information on that. I'd then like to move to the second question.
Does it feel like so much waffling is happening?
Yeah, it does.
Should we move on?
Yeah.
Yep.
Kaya does have to sit there and say, he did text me to say he has to go, and sorry for just bailing suddenly out of the blue. But that's all good. So, yeah, I don't know, the next one I wanted to proceed to was Depi Ngāruia Paka, who actually asked a question and it's answered very quickly. Shall we?
Was the question a yes/no question? And the answer was no, because that tends to be where the National Party does really well with answering.
I don't know, let's find out.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Minister and the Chair of the House Select Committee for the report. A couple of questions, and I'll do them really quickly. The first one in the regional health outcome data, and I think I've spoken to the Minister about this before, a question in the House, that from Te Whatu Ora's perspective, it wasn't the regional health outcome data wasn't readily available, it wasn't regularly updated, and therefore we weren't able to monitor by region. And I am aware that you've come into this position. I'd welcome a update if there is some solution imminent in that particular space. On that, also, it would be good to know what strategies have been adopted by Te Whatu Ora in implementing the increase for the Māori health workforce particularly, and how has that been monitored, and how do you see that progressing? And just a couple of things, and you have been commenting again, I'm sort of flipping from what you're saying today, but looking at the last couple of years, for example, in hospitals and communities where the after-hour services are being challenged, and CEOs are going back to Te Whatu Ora to look at solutions. Purero and Kapiti with Kinapuru Hospital have got solutions. We've got local iwi and communities that would be happy to partner and take over some of those facilities. I wonder where the Minister is at with some of those local solutions that you're referring to. And finally, in the COVID space, which I would like to bring up, Ō-Rākau were Ō-Rākau were a firm that worked with the community. They were critical to actually making sure that there was elimination when there wasn't, and lockdown wasn't necessary. There was a lot to be learnt from that in the community space, and I'd be interested in whether the Minister has been had that case put under the partnership that went on in Taranaki, and if he sees it as something that could be analysed and looked in going forward as well. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I'll come back to the member on regional health outcomes and the monitoring in a moment, but she's raised the question of Kinapuru. A urgent report into after-hours care was commissioned just at the end of this period and under scrutiny here tonight, and I'm still waiting for that full report. But what I wanted to say to the member was I did meet with the executive and some of the kaimahi from Ō-Rākau about 3 weeks ago, and listened and understood some of the suggestions they were putting forward, which I'd have to say were encouraging. So even though that is actually outside of the frame that we're discussing here tonight, I did want to give her some reassurance that that urgent after-hours review is still to land on my desk in a substantive way, which will inform this discussion further, and that I have met with key stakeholders like Ō-Rākau and indeed their Hapu Mama facility as well, which was very invigorating, and I'll look to come back to her other questions in a moment.
So, Debbie definitely knows how to get a lot of questions into a small amount of time.
Yeah, it's always impressive to see him actually answer a question. But it does make me want, like, I totally get health system under stress, things like that. If he's going out and meeting all of these key stakeholders, how often they turn around and say things like, so, smoking.
Yeah.
Isn't New Zealand supposed to be smoke-free by 2025?
Not anymore.
Not anymore, yeah. That's one of the things they threw out.
That bill was to repeal it was passed under urgency, which is quite interesting because the UK followed something very similar. So now the only country in the world that actually can stop you from buying cigarettes after a certain point is Russia.
Jeez.
But maybe that's the reason why they got rid of it, because Vladimir Putin already did it.
Possibly, but at the same time, they didn't tell anybody that's what they were planning beforehand. But it is that kind of decision, though, that is going to have a huge long-term impact on the health services that we have in this country. And it's going to have massive impacts across every community. And so it's the sort of thing that, while, yeah, we definitely need to refocus what our health system is doing and how it works and deal with those shortages that we've got to deal with and the brain drain that's coming and all of those kind of issues, we shouldn't actively have a government trying to make it worse in the long term, which is what it feels like with this particular government.
Yes. Any other comments before we get to my favourite bit for the night?
Yeah, there's a few things I wanted to comment on, and this is something which I've got a lot of experience with because I've worked for our local health board, and there's always an overload of work. My wife currently works in the Lower Hutt Hospital on the children's ward as well, and there's always a overload of work. Staff is always under stress, and there's never enough staff to hire to do the jobs. And so we have a perpetual problem which is similar in not just the health system, but in the building industry, in the IT industry, and where people are continuously hired from overseas. They can't turn over their work permits fast enough to get them here fast enough, and they make them jump through hoops, and it's been ridiculous the amount of things they have to do to get here, where there's no fast track system to get them here faster or easier. There's actually more problems that makes it harder for staff to be hired in New Zealand, and I can't see an end to the way they do this. And to make things worse, under MB, after firing so many people, the current employees, I should say, they're going to have to take on the workload, but their contracts haven't been amended to say that they'll be taking on that workload. So I can just see I can see catastrophe waiting to happen.
Yeah. So how many 100% beyond normal operating capacity are these staff members meant to be working at?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, they had a workforce here, but obviously due to COVID and then the vaccines, they got rid of a whole lot of people.
Well, I'm not sure if that's so much in the nursing profession, but there are some people who did leave because of that. I mean, that does happen. And I mean, what some people's standards are, it's definitely on that one. Now, here's something that made me absolutely laugh. These are the doozies that happen in Parliament.
In crisis before they reach out for help.
The question is that the motion be agreed to.
There was no motion. Nobody's moved anything.
Well, I will now report progress on this bill.
Just inviting a member to move to report progress. It's not your decision.
Okay, so, Mr. Campbell.
Move that the debate on this question now close.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. No, sorry. So the member is moving that we report progress. is what the member is moving, is he not? I'm sure I heard those words. Well, the member might like to move that we report progress.
I move that we report process.
Well done. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those who are of that opinion say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. I will report progress on this bill.
Thank you, Greg.
The House is resumed.
Madam Speaker, the committee has considered the Appropriation 2022-23 Confirmation and Validation Bill and reports progress. I move the report be adopted.
The question is that the report be adopted. Those of that opinion will say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The bill is set down for further consideration in committee stage next sitting day. I call...
So, quite... Whoopsie! What just happened?
I totally get it. Like, it can be really confusing to understand what your role is, especially when you've got somebody like Barbara Kuriger there as Deputy Chair who doesn't quite understand what the role of an MP is when it comes to investigations from MPI on her husband and son. Very confusing.
Yeah,
they're talking about progress on the bill, and there's nothing mentioned about what progress was made on the bill.
It's a weird one, but can you picture Greg O'Connor like listing off? You could be there for 5 minutes if he sat there and list off everything. But yeah, no, that was definitely a whoopsie of what happened there. So there are 2 bills later on that day, which we will, what's it called? There's 2 bills on that day that we can sit there and showcase, but it's no point looking at videos of it. Do we really want to see Shane Jones?
No.
No.
Never.
No, not really. No.
Yeah, so just a moment while I change the split screen. It looks like... I totally agree with that comment, just being put there. So the New Zealand Controlling Interest Bill is to make an amendment. Now, I'm going to zoom this in because... Well, 150% was just a bit too much. So the bill is processed to, change the law. This bill is to amend the Superannuation and Retirement Income Act 2001 to allow the New Zealand Super Fund to take controlling interest. So this is to deal with the Super Fund. I did watch a couple of videos on it, but I kind of basically just went like, that's a bit different, annoying to try and work everything to go through at the time, and we probably haven't got all day, considering we've just been on one day. We've been here for over an hour, and I'm glad we don't really have much about the Wednesday agenda and videos. But yeah, there's a lot on there. This is the other bill that was being amended by, that one's the one about Shane Jones. Which is, but I don't know much about the provisions there. Thanks for Stacey, who has put the links up online so you can actually take a look at the legislation yourself. Now, this was something that was meant to happen on, this is something Kaya was actually meant to have a bit of a passion on, was about the Mass Immigration Amendment Bill. But it's just a shame he's not here.
That's an interesting one, because that was one that the United Nations Centre for Human Rights had issues with.
Yeah, I because this is something we spoke about last night on it. What was the other thing in there was what was the point of the bill? It felt like it's one of those a was it a feel-good bill? But that was about it. The bill is to amend the Immigration Act 2009. This will make changes to the immigration regime to enable the management of irregular migrations by providing more time with district courts to consider applications of mass arrivals of warrants of commitment and allowing migrants to be detained until application is determined, and clarifying the responsibility of the members of the mass arrival group to apply for entry permission and a visa. So, I don't know what.
Essentially, from what I've read of it, it is about mostly refugees, because that's what you would consider a mass arrival that wasn't organized, essentially. Like it's a last minute thing. It's about the ability to basically keep refugees locked up somewhere until everything is processed. The United Nations opposal to the bill was around the fact that there's no real concrete numbers there for how long it should take for a district court to look at things and get evidence through it and make their decisions. So essentially it's completely open-ended, and there's nothing saying, like, a district court might see it in a week, but there's nothing saying they can't, okay, yeah, we've seen it and we're going to delay it for 2 weeks. And so those people who are still going through that process have to be detained in that particular area that they're being put aside in until that process is sorted. And that was one of the big issues that they really had from the United Nations perspective on it. It's too open-ended, and it's basically detaining refugees until we can get off our asses and sort it.
Yeah. And this is what the summary of the bill does sit there and state, that you can find on the website. Stacey has posted a link for the bill. So yeah, it's a bit confusing what that bill's about, except for the fact you can be detained up to 96 hours. But when did we have, a good example? When did we have a boat of refugees arrive in New Zealand? I don't think it's ever.
Yeah, it was in the 80s.
Okay, before I was born, probably before, yeah. So we have one example of it dated back to when David Logie was Prime Minister, or Muldoon, whichever.
Well, one of the things which I find it hard to understand is, why are they putting something like this through unless they're expecting a whole lot of refugees to turn up soon?
It's very much like the Australian, we've got to be tough on immigration, otherwise everyone's going to be here kind of thing, without much of a basis. I mean, Australia has more of a basis for it, but it doesn't happen here. We're just so far away. It's populist. It's all about being into a populist agenda and being only for the right kind of immigrants.
So what are they going to do? Are they just going to hold a whole lot of people at the airport and detain them there until their visas are processed?
Well, they can legally be held in a New Zealand prison. There was a situation of a detained refugee who was in Mount Eden for 3 years.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Which you have to ask questions. To me, that's too long. There are times where it should take to say, how long do you detain someone? And why did it take so long?
I think you have to look at it. I think you have to look at it from the refugee's point of view. If they're a refugee, what's going on where they come from is often quite a lot of conflict. So they're not going to stand up and say much, because even though they'd be here in isolation, it would be better than where they were coming from. And so people that have been in jail for 10 years will think, well, at least I'm safe in jail here, because there's no war, there's no conflict, there's food, I've got a shower, clothes on my back. But that doesn't make it right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most refugees that we have come into the country, we don't have land borders. It's not like they're showing up at the border going, I want
exactly.
refuge.
I see your point.
Yeah, there's a massive process to apply to become a refugee migrant to this country. And so the chances of there being unplanned refugee applications is not huge.
Yeah. I've actually got
I do
a
know,
number of friends that have gone through the process with me, and
yeah,
they
I
told me
know
it was going to
Swami.
get there.
Yeah, when Swami and his wife and his son came over from Sri Lanka as a refugee, they were spent 6 years in Thailand before they ended up in New Zealand. So it was quite some time through the process. And like every person that I've known that's come in as a refugee, every single one of them, it's not been a 15-minute hop down the road or on a plane. It's been years.
Yes.
It's not been a quick process. Wherever they've come from in the world, by the time they've reached our country, it would have been 5 years down the track before that would have even happened. And I've looked at points of families where they've had kids born in the home country, born in a refugee camp, born in New Zealand of a family, and just looking at all the gaps in that, and you're talking 10 years from the oldest to the youngest child if they were having kids in that, depending how they choose to do it. I know in Swami's case, him and his wife decided one kid's enough until they had their life sorted. And when they had their life sorted, that's when their second child came along. But yeah, it's not a quick process going through the whole thing. So back to so Wednesday there was more appropriation bills and the mass immigration bill. That nothing fantastic out of it. So we're head straight through to Thursday, where there's a bit more. This is a lot more committee of the House because Penny Simmons is in the chair, but a lot of the questions aren't to Penny Simmons. They're to other ministers in the chamber. But let's kick off with Rachel Brooking, who's the first one on there. Now I'll reset up the shared screen. There we are. Great to see some chatter in the comment section on there. I'm not sure if Stacey's been putting them across the screen while I've been doing other things, but I like the people who are watching, and thank you for sitting down there and being entertained. So let's kick off with Rachel.
With a few of them and see how she wants to respond. Noting, of course, that there are other ministers in the House at the moment as well, and I note that some of them are associate ministers who seem to be leading resource management reforms, and she may want to comment on that. The first round of resource management reforms, amendments to the Act that are all regulations, and that the press release that came out last week did not have her name on it. Secondly, I would like to ask the Minister about waste. There was a huge work program at the time of this annual review period to overhaul or rewrite the Waste Minimisation Act as being out of date, not good enough for the compliance, monitoring and enforcement functions, but also for product stewardship and also the very old Litter Act. We were told in the hearing, this is at page 55 of the transcript, that there was a live conversation about waste, and I would like to know what is happening with this and the associated investment that comes from the hypothecated waste levy. Also, in this set of questions, separately, interested also in the Environment Reporting Bill. We know, again, during the phase of this annual report that there was work being done and the decisions had been made and it had been referred to Parliamentary Council Office to redo that Environment Reporting Bill. It's something that the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment certainly brings to the attention of the Environment Select Committee members. Where's that at? And then for this set of questions, also interested in what's happening to highly productive land. We had a discussion, page 30 of the transcript, with the Secretary for the Environment about the relationship between national direction and how often national direction can be inconsistent with each other. Of course, that was a big part of the Natural and Built Environments Act, was to get that national direction to be all consistent with each other. That's since been repealed. But James Palmer said that work has been undertaken that is supportive of our housing imperatives as well, and that all that nests together in relation to productive land. So does this mean that we will be seeing houses on highly productive land? Are there going to be changes to the rules around the importance of that highly productive land? And what will farmers have to say about that? The Associate Minister might also want to comment.
The Honourable Penny Simmons.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and thank you to the member, and she had quite a lot there, so I'll try and go through bits and pieces, and if I forget any of it that I was writing down, I'll come back to it. You did ask some quite specific questions about the RMA reform, which I will hand over in due course to the Minister responsible for that. But first of all, can I just note that the fast track does have a ministers group. That is, and I am involved in that. There is a process where written comments will be sought from the Minister of the Environment, where they are the relevant portfolio minister, and that I am confident that the environmental considerations across many stages will be considered by approving ministers, in addition to the environmental protection that will be given through the expert panel stage of any fast track consenting. But I will hand over to at the end of this to the appropriate minister. You also asked about the waste minimisation program, and thank you very much for your questions on that. I know that that's an area of passion for you. It's also an area of passion for me. And it was delightful to talk to the Honourable Eugenie Sage yesterday and share some of that passion. So, as you will know, we have been left, or this country has been left, with a number of legacy landfills that are contaminated and are vulnerable to extreme weather events. And I was very pleased, I think in February of this year, to be able to announce the $6.6 million of investment to the local authorities to address those sites in Tairāwhiti, in Nelson, in South Canterbury, and also in Southland. We are certainly looking at the range of activities that were within that wider waste minimisation program, things like the product stewardship programs, and you'll have been very pleased, of course, to have seen the tyre program started in February of this year, with the second tranche of that occurring in September. There are a number of pilots that I have been interested in finding out the reviews of those. I visited very recently the pelletizer plant for the Bailage wrap, and having a look at the work that's going on there after they received funding to assist them in developing that. I note also that pelletizer can deal with construction wraps, which is another area of priority for us in terms of looking at the waste that occurs from the construction and the demolition sector. So there is still a range of work being looked at in that space, product stewardship and container return schemes, but of course no decisions have been made in those areas, but we certainly have those things on the radar. I think you may have also asked some questions about fresh water, did you? I'm just trying to think back. Perhaps I'll pass over to the Minister for RMA reform if he wants to speak about the question around the fast-track consenting process.
Okay.
Talk about wastage.
Yes, and see if any of our viewers on there, if you can find a Trade Me listening for a Waffle House in Invercargill, feel free to post the link. Let's see. Yeah. Let's continue on with Mr. The Bish, as I think everyone in the hut calls him.
The Minister like a repeat of the questions? Honourable Rachel Brooking, there's RMA specific questions that you had?
This is making me think back in time there. I asked a range of questions. One of them, the first question was really about the other ministers in the House and the role of the Minister for the Environment when the most recent RMA reforms that we've heard about, so what you're calling RMA 1, the press release for that range of changes, there are changes only to regulations, there's no change to the statute, and the Minister's name was not on the press release about that. So it's how the Minister for the Environment, who is responsible for all those regulations, noting that some of them have been delegated to the Associate Minister for the Environment, Honourable Hoggard, but none of them seem to be related to RMA reform, as in the wider point on that is the government's been here now for over 5 months, and surely that work could have done via the normal regulatory process rather than needing primary legislation.
Honourable Chris Bishop.
Happy to speak to that. I mean, the broader point is how the government's organising itself when it comes to the environment and RMA. So I think it's pretty obvious, and we're way away from the annual review of the 2022 to 23 year, but anyway, happy to answer the question. I am the Minister responsible for the resource management system, including reform of it. That's the point of the government. So I've got responsibility for the RMA, and so essentially I, as the Minister, and my office is a bit of a clearinghouse for what we're doing with the RMA. So we've already done the repeal of the NBA and the SPA. We did that before Christmas, as the member knows. The first resource management bill will soon come to the House, and so I'm responsible for the various different parts of it. Of course, working closely alongside my colleagues, Associate Minister for the Environment, Minister Hoggard, Minister of Agriculture, Todd McClay, Minister for the Environment, Penny Simmons, and other relevant ministers in relation to the coal mining changes that Minister Jones was talking about earlier in the House. Working closely with him on that. So the bill will be in my name when it comes to the House, and the second resource management bill will be in my name as well. Why is it primary legislation? Oh, because that's the most quick and effective way to make changes. Make changes. And it also, in relation to national direction, which I heard the member talking about, one of the changes in the first resource management bill will be changes to the national direction schema and protocols to make it easier to do national direction changes, because that is part of the problem, is that it should be quite easy to update various national policy statements and national environmental standards, and it's not. And so the member will see in due course. Sorry, say that again. Oh, highly productive land, that was the other thing. The previous government consulted on a range of changes to highly productive land, which we are considering, and we also will in due course make our own changes to the national policy statement on highly productive land, because it is not enabling enough of development capacity and infrastructure in particular. Well, the member laughs, but that's just the reality. So in due course we will come to the House, or the government will promulgate through national direction changes a variety of changes to the MPS HPL. That's been well signalled, and we will do that. So I've got passage of the overall resource management. Obviously we work closely as colleagues around how all that fits together, but we've got 20 different coalition government commitments across the resource management space, across agriculture, mining, housing, renewable energy, and there's got to be a bit of a clearinghouse to bring it all together, and that's the way we do it.
The Honourable Marama Davidson.
Okay, this is, I was going to sit there and say, how many times could I have boiled the jug for a cup of tea just then?
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of waffle going on, and it's like, one thing I picked up on was that Chris Bishop, I think that's the guy who's speaking, is in coalition with Shane Jones. That's news. That's news to me. So obviously they're up to something together.
Well, here's a bit more of Penny sharing the load around her ministers. Just hold on.
If that's a very deliberate thing, because Penny's obviously been in the press a little bit lately with what happened with Whaikaha. Maybe it's she's a good MP and we can handle helping her out, and like she's definitely reaching out, and we're backing her without actually giving her the job that she screwed up within the first couple of months of getting it. And at the same time, I'm also wondering whether or not they're justifying their pay rise by word count.
Well, let's get back to sharing the load around in Committee of the House.
Improve environmental outcomes.
Mark Cameron.
Minister may want to bring the Associate Minister for the Environment forward to speak about very quickly the good work at a local level, catchment, local nuances to do with winter grazing, intensive winter grazing and farm practices. If he's interested to illuminate the House on all the good work that rural New Zealand is doing.
The Honourable Andrew Hoggard.
Certainly. Yes, I mean, this work's probably would have begun about 5 odd years ago, where many farmers in a number of catchments, particularly in Southland, realised that their practices were under intense people were looking at it and not happy, and there's been a lot of work done by numerous industry bodies around creating what we called at the time the farm grazing winter module, where farmers would work out these plans for themselves and enact them. And you saw over the last few years much really improved changes in farmer practices and outcomes. I recall seeing the previous Minister of Agriculture getting up and talking very highly of the good work that farmers had done in those catchments in terms of reducing the amount of sediment and the any concerning pictures out there. So yes, there has been a lot of great work that's been done by farmers. This was all well before any regulations came in, probably proving that we didn't need the regulation to start with.
Land Farm.
Okay, so we'll just hold there before we continue. Yes, I'd like to know what happened to Andrew's eye, that he needs the eye patch, because that seems to be a recent feature. For the question from Wahina, no, he's an act. Just to answer that one, he's an act. But, how long has he been wearing the eye patch for? Because it's only come up in the last week or two.
Yeah, I think he had an injury or something fairly recently. Maybe eye surgery, something along those lines.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, no, we'll end with that. I mean, there would be completely legitimate reasons why. Hey, and it will be remembered for, just like it has been here on the order paper. But yes, definitely sharing the load around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't know there was such thing as dress up in Parliament.
Well, that's actually the really interesting thing as well, because you started off that with Mark Cameron and then you go to Andrew Hoggard, and those were the two that asked the Speaker for special dispensation so they could wear muddy gumboots in Parliament House in support of all the regulation those poor farmers have had to deal with, and they got it. Like that was a ridiculous stunt, to be honest. Like, any farmer will tell you don't wear gumboots in the house. Any farmer's wife will make sure you don't wear gumboots in the house. But yeah, just those two are really performative about the poor farmers. And I get it, farmers have a really tough lot. There's a lot to juggle. But those two in particular, they're all about the performance of being there for farmers instead of actually doing things to help the farming community.
Oh, I like what Stacey has just sat there and put in the chat. I lived on enough farms to know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like the interesting thing is, every time we go to Chris and Daniela's house, it's a pain in the butt having to spend 2 minutes to put on your shoes, because the rules are you don't wear shoes in the house at their property.
No, not at all. And on a farm, definitely not.
And
I don't want to get mud everywhere.
Yeah, they're organic farm. Oh yeah, let's continue to see what's come from the Greens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm noting that time is quickly running out, so I'm just going to get straight to my question for the Minister. Does she, I think we had really clearly outlined across the agencies that despite all the great work that's going on across iwi, hapu, farmers, community groups, everything, biodiversity is still going backwards and in decline. So does the Minister consider that addressing our biodiversity crisis is actually a priority issue for her and the environment? And what is her view on the role or importance of the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity in addressing that?
The Honourable Penny Simmons, if you'd like.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, there's a lot of important work going on in terms of the national directions, and certainly we are looking at ensuring that we are clustering that work so that we're not overburdening a range of community organisations in the consultation phase. I do want to make some special comment again, going back to the question that was asked about the work that the farmers are doing, and it ties in with the questions that you've asked, that the member has asked, in terms of there is great work happening on the ground with hapu, with iwi, with catchment groups, with farmers, and I want to note that the farmers consider that war on farming now is over, has stopped, that this government is recognising that farmers are in fact environmentalists, that changes to things like the stock exclusion regulations, the repeal of the intensive winter grazing, and the 3-year suspension on identifying new SNAs, of course related to the Indigenous biodiversity, that we want to suspend while we go through that consultation phase again and ensure, sorry, my time is up, Mr Chairman is telling me, so there is plenty of work underway in this area.
So let's see if the voters today, they are prepared to report on progress.
The Honourable Scott Simpson.
Report progress.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. I will report progress on this bill.
The House is resumed.
Mr Speaker, the committee has considered the Appropriation 2022-23 Confirmation and Validation Bill and reports progress.
The question is that the report be adopted. Those of that opinion will say aye. The contrary, no. The ayes have it. The bill is set down for further consideration in committee next sitting day.
Okay, we've finished our bits to deal with Penny and the waffling.
Do we get to choose what the topping is? Is it like a kind of maple syrup or
I don't know. Can we have coconut cream?
Oh yeah, why not? Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, anyone knows me knows I'm allergic to dairy, so coconut cream would actually be quite beneficial.
I like golden syrup.
Golden syrup. So I wonder if we can start a trend. Penny waffling hashtag on Twitter. It's going to be quite interesting, and see if we can also get this to show up on a lot of media around there. If we can get it on BHN News tonight. Now we're running low on time, so we'll see if we can get Andrew Bailey's privacy speech on the. So this is a new. What was it called? It was so this is the Contracts of Insurance bill first reading. So this is a new bill out there. We will go and put it onto. So I'll have to turn off that shared screen, turn on a new shared screen, all the fun stuff that goes with it. That's the one.
So while you're doing that, I just got an update on what actually happened with Andrew Hogarth. He had surgery for a detached retina, and that's why he's wearing an eye patch. He's not just a typical one-eyed farmer. He actually has a legitimate reason for it.
Oh, I had one of those about a few years back.
Yep. So, yeah, okay. So here's the bill, as it will say here. This is an omnibus bill to enable consumers and businesses to effectively protect themselves against risk while minimising the cost and impact of the insurers. To be honest, do we really want to hear Andrew Bailey-Seth's speech? I personally don't think it's an omnibus bill. They're boring. Okay. The next bill. Now, this is a more interesting one. This will be the privacy... what's it called? Privacy Amendment Bill. When it... no. What? Oh, no. Don't want to click exit from there. Otherwise, that could have sat there and killed Restream. Yeah, anyone who uses Restream, don't hit the leave key until you're ready to leave. The Privacy Amendment Bill. Would we like to hear Nicole McKee, on the behalf of Paul Goldsmith, read the opening statement for 2 minutes? It goes for 5, but I rule after about 2 minutes it's done its dash.
As long as it's not more waffling.
I don't. It could be. So, okay. So now we've got to change the shared screen back. Okay.
Legislative statement on the Privacy Amendment Bill.
That legislative statement is published under the authority of the House and can be found on the Parliament website.
I move that the Privacy Amendment Bill be now read a first time, and I nominate the Justice Committee to consider the bill. Mr. Speaker, I move that the Privacy Amendment Bill be now read a first time. The purpose of this bill is to improve transparency for individuals about the collection of their personal information. The sharing of personal information is an essential part of doing business both worldwide and in New Zealand. It is also important for enabling the delivery of joined-up public services. A range of entities need to be able to collect personal information in order to provide a wide range of goods and services to their customers and users. Protecting personal information is crucial to enabling this. As New Zealand's digital economy grows, businesses and public organisations will seek to innovate and increase productivity through digital technologies, greater use of data, digital trade, and the exporting of services. This will lead to a corresponding increase in the flow of personal information between agencies, both domestically and internationally. The Privacy Act has 13 information privacy principles that govern how businesses and organisations should collect, handle and use personal information. Together, these principles ensure that New Zealanders know when their information is being collected, that their personal information is used and shared appropriately, that personal information is kept safe and secure, and that New Zealanders can get access to their information. At present, under Information Privacy Principle 3, there is a requirement for public or private agencies to notify an individual of a range of matters when they directly collect their personal information. However, there is no requirement for public or private agencies to notify individuals when personal information has been collected about them from a source other than the individuals themselves. This means that individuals are notified when their personal information is collected directly from them, but not when their personal information is subsequently collected by another agency. This means there is a risk individuals may not know all of the agencies which hold their personal information. This is an impediment to them fully exercising their privacy rights under the Act. We have an opportunity to strengthen the principle of transparency in the Privacy Act 2020 by ensuring that individuals are notified when their personal information is being shared between agencies. The first part of the bill will introduce a new Information Privacy Principle 3A relating to the indirect collection of personal information. It is closely based on the existing Information Privacy Principle 3, which deals with the direct collection of personal information. Under the proposed IPP 3A, the agency which indirectly receives an individual's personal information will be required to notify that individual of a range of matters, including the purpose for which the information has been collected, the name and address of the agency that has collected the information and is holding the information, and the individual's rights of access to the correction of any of that information. Agencies would be required to take reasonable steps to comply with the notification obligation as soon as practical after indirectly collecting the personal information.
I think from what we gathered, there's a lot on there. I wonder, will police be obligated to notify information on the updating of a particular member of the public's gang member status on the National Gang Register?
So this is actually the field that I work in. For people who think I just sit on my ass all day collecting the dole, it's not true. I actually work with a bunch of international data managers and help them with their content. And this is very similar to the sort of stuff that we see out of GDPR in Europe. And it's all about making sure there's transparency in the data that's being collected. And it tries to limit the option of people selling that data off to a third party. And so it's very similar to what we already see in Europe and in California law. So in terms of what we're seeing here, it's kind of an updating of that, but there will bound to be carve-outs for things like the police to be able to do what they do, security services to do what they do. It's basically bringing us in line with the rest of the world. And Australia is sort of moving in the same direction with their laws as well. It's actually not that much of an out there jump from where we are at the moment. It's just keeping people informed of what content's being created and curated about them.
Thank you for that, and that was quite a good. Maybe we need to get the people to actually put submissions in to ask if the National Gang Register can report the thing to the thing. They can put that in a submission actually, and I wonder if that may end up being a random thing that ends up in there. Know any gang members?
One
Can someone send something to the to the different gangs out there? Do they have Twitter accounts?
Some do.
Some do.
Actually, I know a lot of gang members, and a lot of them do.
So you wouldn't actually need to go to the police to find out they're a gang member to get their information. You just need to look on social media.
I mean, you won't be able to look at them and go, well, there's the patch anymore, so check out Twitter instead.
You can actually do investigations on social media, especially Facebook, because if somebody's involved and they put a picture up, they actually tag everybody in the gang and everybody associated. I'm not kidding about that either.
Oh, yep. Okay, so now let's get to the fun part of the show. This is the part where we encourage you to put in submissions. I do like that one. Won't gang members use VPNs? Yes, they probably do. Yes, they probably do.
I think it depends on the gang.
I can actually tell you something which I saw live. So one gang locally, I won't name the gang, I won't name the area, they took offence to what one gang had done to one of their sons. So they actually went up and shot this guy in the head. He had a bullet in his head. Then he jumped on Facebook and he went to video his mate to tell him that he's going to get so and so and so and so, but actually accidentally went live. literally. And I actually saw the live.
Oh. I think that would be suitable for a TV show called New Zealand's Dumbest Criminals.
The sequel to Police 10-7.
Yeah. Which didn't focus on Auckland, particularly South Auckland. Okay, so let's get back to the fun part. This is where we encourage people to put in their submissions on that. So this bill closes tonight. Now, we did talk about it on last week's show, but it's the corrections. What is it called? It's the Corrections Victims Amendment Bill, and the bill would require corrections to put in place arrangements to make sure victims and others who are subjected to protection orders under the Family Court Act 2018 are protected from unwanted communications with prisoners. So that would be, if you remember your victims, address and send them a letter and keep New Zealand Post employed. So if you want to put a submission on that bill, that closes tonight at midnight. So that will be tonight's, this is the first bill. So the next one is the report of the Controller and Auditor General making infrastructure decisions quickly report. You can put that in. So this submission closes on Wednesday. I don't know what the purpose of this bill is. It's not tagged to a minister, hence why you'll notice an MP's photo is not there. But it's something you could submit on. I mean, you could also submit on the National Policy Statement, which that submission closed about 2 weeks ago, but there was the option of that at one point. Now, the Regulatory Systems Primary Industries Amendment Bill. This policy is an omnibus bill to improve regulatory systems by ensuring they are efficient and effective as they accord to the best practice of the processes. So we don't tend to hear about these words in New Zealand so much at omnibus bills because we don't have government shutdowns because they're actually unconstitutional. But in the United States, these are many of these bills that this be one of those bills that can cause a government shutdown. And the last but not least, Uncle Shane Jones. And it will be on the amendments to the Fisheries Act 1996 relating to the New Zealand's approach to international fisheries. This change will bring New Zealand regulations and compliance regimes more in line with its international obligations, particularly regarding illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing. So, anyone's getting their submission, getting their keyboards out and starting to put in submissions on any of those bills?
I want to see what I can do to bring about a government shutdown. See if I can make it constitutional.
That would be good.
Well, yeah, maybe with the current, maybe with the current one, but I mean, they are technically unconstitutional in New Zealand, along with most countries.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do wonder if any of these bills, any of our submissions to these bills will make any difference anyway.
Mine did on the Wellington City Council annual plan. I managed to ramp up bus lane enforcement in Wellington by my own submission because I pointed out that it could bring in $10 million a year additional income to the council.
Oh, wow.
and they did it. They did it. Yes, you can't go down Adelaide Road in Wellington or Riniford Street now without seeing a bus camera.
What a lot of it comes down to is actually having time to read through and make a submission. And that's one of the things is that often I'll see a bill that's gone through a couple of months after the fact, and at the time you just don't have time to read it all. So that's what's probably good about the show it brings up issues that people out there may resonate with, and it may motivate them to, to put a submission in.
Yeah. I mean, I put one in on the court amendment remote participation bill. So I did put in a submission on that one, which and I always keep sitting there and say, you might have different opinions, but who believes Nicole McKee is going to be the one that's going to have some very long-lasting effects on our country positively as a result of this government?
Yeah.
You're kind of shaking your head on that one, Paul.
I can't believe anything Nicole McKee actually does directly is going to have a positive impact on anybody except gun sellers.
Agree.
Well, that bill's still yet to come. That one's going to be interesting. But I mean, just look at the bills that are going forward so far. That the ones that are in her name seem to be like genuinely accepted bills that just make sense.
I think a lot of people forget just how bipartisan our parliament can actually be. We hear about all the drama and everything like that, but because we've got a relatively bipartisan political system, it's really good to get people out there putting in their perspectives for submissions to make sure that they can get their point of view across, because chances are there's going to be something that people write that most MPs are going to agree with or be able to empathise with or understand, and that helps us get better processes and better decisions made in the long run. But the drama is always there for TV. But it's important to know that we've got a mostly bipartisan parliament.
And as you notice, we haven't shown anything about Julianne.
No.
Because, who cares? We're showing the positive sides of Parliament.
No, don't need to take up time here showing her drama.
No. Well, put it this way. I mean, I can certainly tell you there was no issues when she has been a very good customer at being here, and she always remembers her keep cup. But also, our deputy mayor is the same thing. Every time Laurie Foon comes, she has 2 keep cups on her. That's how dedicated she is to reducing waste.
Is she a coffee addict?
Well, she only drinks one coffee when she comes to the market, when she's doing, campaigning, that sort of thing. She's not someone who has 3 or 4 coffees, but she's someone who actually does keep an eye on things, that sort of stuff. I've always found, it's one of those things. That's Laurie always seems to support local small businesses, but she comes from that sort of background as well. She was a previous small business owner of clothing recycling at one point in time, and and something to laugh about from Wayne's neck of the woods. Her cousin is Tui Lewis.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah. Oh, she just blurted out randomly at a Newtown Residents Association meeting. I said, "Why don't you give Tui a ring and ask?" And she goes, "Tui's my cousin." And that wasn't the reason for asking. It was like, what do you do as a deputy mayor? Oh, there's one up the road. Give her a ring. You don't just have to ask your predecessor. Yeah. Okay, well, I think we can call it a wrap-up of a 2-hour order paper show. I'm pretty sure our panellists are going to have a good yak afterwards, and we can see you there. Thank you, Ian, Wayne, Paul, and Kaya for making today's show a success.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Sam.
Hopefully I'll see you all again. I have to go now because I'm about to go into my next meeting.
Have fun at the next meeting.
Paper, your express ticket to the New Zealand House of Representatives. Every episode, we unravel the complex world of legislation, debate, and democracy. From bills to select committees, we've got it all covered. From our team of political commentators who will dissect and explain what's happened so you can remain up to date on what's happened in the Aotearoa New Zealand Parliament. To support our channel, you can become a Patreon member at patreon.com/it'sintheballot. The Order Paper podcast is brought to you by It's in the Ballot Productions, live at 12 p.m. New Zealand Standard Time every Monday.